before this episode, which is pretty much the same disclaimer that I put forward before the Tuesday episode, and that tonight we're talking about something that is very, very triggering for some, and that of alcoholism. So I will tell you to please consult your doctor, your mental health professional, your outreach group, your sponsor or specialist before adopting any change to your dietary, physical, and or mental health regime. And that said, let's begin. Today we continue the conversation about alcoholism, and moreover, not just the sense that it was a co-addiction in my case, but it really was someone's chief addiction. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about what else was lying within that, the sort of things that he realized over that time. His recovery and his story. This is The Venture Forward. Good evening once again, and if in case you are new to the Venture Forward, welcome. I'm John Venturini, and I help struggling adults stop overeating, drinking, and gambling, amongst other addictions, once and for all. This path forward allows them to have all the energy they want, restore their mental clarity, and regain their brain health and quality of life. I am basically someone who's been tracking his food and going on a dietary regime for the last 621 days. I've been sober for the last 518 days, and as of today, I have not been gambling for 200 days. These addictions have been part of my life for a very long time, and they are all been intertwined and basically removed so I can have a venture forward. A couple of announcements before we begin. Next week, we have actually moved the gambling talk one full week. We're going to continue alcoholism next week, next Tuesday and next Thursday. We have two people that are going to join us to tell us their stories on Tuesday and Thursday respectively to continue this talk, because if there's anything we've been seeing in this incredibly crazy year that 2020 has been, it's definitely how much alcoholism has picked up, for sure. Before I bring my guest on, I just want to say hello to everybody that's in the room. Matt Haas, how are you? Hope you're doing well. Merck, how you doing? Hope you're doing okay. And Holly, hope you're doing well as well. Well, I think that said, I want to introduce our guest. He is a wonderful member of the groups that I'm in. He is from Melbourne, Australia, and his name is Des. So let me bring him on. Hey, Des, how are you? You know, I did the same thing to Merck with the mute in the beginning, and I apologize for that. But how are you doing, how are you doing, Des? What a day!
especially if you think I'm there. That's all right. I'll take that.
Actually, let me get you over to 2 panel real quick. Might help us out a bit. There we go. That's going to help. Des, how are you this wonderful Friday morning?
Well, I've had my 2 cups of coffee, so I'm pretty good at the moment. We'll just see how long that lasts for.
I'm somewhat inspired by you, Des, because I have my cup, and I know it's like 6:35 at night here outside of Philadelphia, but yet in honor of your 2 cups, I figured I would treat myself to a cup of coffee this evening as well. So
I'll enjoy it.
thank you very much. I appreciate that.
As long as it's got caffeine and not decaf.
It's a 50-50. It's a 50-50 there, and people are telling me that the audio on your side is a bit quiet. So let me see if I could up that up a little bit. Let's see. All right. Des, can you give me a testing 1 2 3 over there?
I suppose I could go 1, 2, 3.
There we go. It sounds like you're coming in a little bit better there for sure. All right. So that said, I met you about 4.5 months ago in these groups, and I truly think you have an incredible story, and it's an honor to have you on the show tonight, to say the least. It's absolutely an honor and a pleasure to have you on. I am very interested in your story when you realized that, it was basically an addiction and all of that. So, Des, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, I had told me bits and pieces of my story, especially to you and other members of recovering addicts. But my story actually began when I was at the first day of school, because I wasn't expecting what happened. Like, I was manhandled into line, and from that day on, I'd never felt like a normal person. And my school life wasn't good. Right through, I don't know what you call, but here we call it primary school. It's your first 6 years in school, and I learned early in the piece I couldn't learn. Nothing worked for me. I just couldn't absorb information, couldn't learn. And within the first couple of years at school, I was known as dummy, I was stupid, so I copped that right through primary school, the first 6 years. I had to repeat a year, which made it even worse. So by the time I got to the 6th year and had to start secondary school, which we used to do terms there, but I suppose it would be year 7, like over in America. I don't know how it works here, but my self-esteem was shot as it was.
Mm.
And I couldn't mix with people. I felt like an outsider. I always said I felt like a Martian who just landed on Earth, and I didn't know who I was or what I was doing. And I got to secondary school, and that was even worse, because that's when people start getting to the bullying stage and the really picking on stage and all that. Once again, I couldn't keep up with the schoolwork. I was just known as the dummy. That was in my life all the time.
Mm.
And I couldn't mix with people. I just couldn't. I don't know what it was. I just couldn't sort of be a person around other people. I couldn't be myself. So I always felt uncomfortable. And I remember that's when I started smoking cigarettes. I found if you smoke cigarettes, you're accepted by certain people, whether you're a rebel or you're going along with the gangs or whatever. But that's when I started smoking cigarettes. I got to the stage when I was 13, whatever it was. I was breaking into the back of shops and pinching Coke bottles. And in Australia, you used to get 5 cents return on Coke bottles. So I'd grab 4 Coke bottles, go around the front of the shop, cash them in, and for 20 cents here in Australia, you get a packet of Viscount 10s and a box of matches for 4 Coke bottles. And that was the start where I knew the smoking helped. Well, I thought it did. It just, I was able to hang around other people at my age who smoked, which was very unusual in them days. So the smoking helped me feel like I was part of something.
Mm.
And of course, I still went through secondary school. In about 6, 7, 8, year 8, I was virtually told by the school that I wasn't wanted at the school. I wasn't going to go anywhere. I was too stupid and dumb, and they asked me to leave. Once again, my self-esteem even took a bigger fall. It was then I met another person very much like me, very much like me, and he was the one who got me onto alcohol. And we couldn't afford it, but we used to break in the back of the pub or hotel, whatever you call it over there, and
Mm.
you'd go into the shed where they'd store all the, I think you call them, I don't know what you call. We call them spirits over here anyway. But all the spirit bottles that were stored in the shed had dregs in the bottom of it, whiskies and vodka and that. Just dregs. We used to sit there and tip all the dregs into one bottle. And sometimes we get a half a bottle of spirits, but it's a mixture of whiskey, wine, anything.
Mm.
And we drink that. Wasn't enough to you know, get a real head buzz or anything. But it just gave me that nice feeling, and I learnt early in the piece that that's what alcohol done for me.
Mm.
And my trip with alcohol started. Then, of course, like a lot of us in those days, the drugs come in it, the marijuana, went from marijuana, hash oil, just the whole speed, the whole lot. And I
Mm.
found if I was on these substances, I felt my self-esteem seemed to feel like it went up. I was mixing with other people who were in the same boat. They were drinking, drugging, and all that. And that's at an early age.
Mm.
But it made me feel my self esteem was up. It made me feel accepted.
So at that point, Des,
And
what would you say? You're like in your mid to late teens or late 20s when you
I
really
was
started the
about 15, 16.
15, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was only 15, 16. And yeah, compared to today when I've known of newcomers and all that, it's not. It was young in them days, but these days it wouldn't be classed as young because unfortunately a lot of young ones are starting young. So in those days it was.
Mm.
But I got to the stage because I'm sort of jumping bits and pieces. I'm not going to go into the whole thing, but first you got to the stage where I found if I had to go somewhere that I knew I was going to feel uncomfortable, if I had drugs or alcohol, I'd be all right.
Mm.
And that worked for quite a while. Except I was getting to the stage where I'd start drinking and I'd get to that nice feeling, that merry feeling, that you feel good feeling, where most people would probably stop then because they feel good. I couldn't stop.
Right.
So I used to get to the stage where I was just, yeah, I was just spastic. I remember the first time my mum found out there was something wrong because I come home, real heavy drinking session, and went straight into the house, straight to the bathtub, and I just sat over that bathtub, chucking my guts out. The room was spinning. I was in a real bad way. And I remember Mum coming in, taking one look at me, shaking her head, and walking out. The next morning, I wake up, and of course, my Mum confronted me and says, "Well, you're never going to do that again." And I said, "Nah, no, I've had enough." Until the
Mm.
following weekend, and then done it. And one of the old timers said to me one day, "You know what it's like, Jess?" And I said, "What?" He says, "At that age, it's like getting a hammer and you bash your head with the hammer as hard as you can,
Mm.
and you bleed, it hurts, and you say to yourself, shit, I'm not going to do that again." But with alcohol, we do it again.
Right.
And that's where my journey started taking me so young. I just kept drinking. I had to drink to go to dances. I had to drink to go everywhere because I didn't felt accepted. My self esteem was down. I just didn't feel right unless I was stoned or drunk.
It was a
Uh,
dependence.
yeah, it was a dependence. It was a cover to cover the real me. You know, if I was drunk and drinking with people, they accepted me for some reason. Maybe
Mm.
because I was the clown. I don't know what it was, but I needed the alcohol or the drugs to sort of feel normal. Because, you know, like I said, at school, I was known as the dummy. I was stupid. I was this. I was that. And so my younger years weren't good. They were shit. I was getting kicked out of dances. I was getting kicked out of everywhere because of my behaviour with drink. And nothing changed right up to I was about 18.
Mm.
It just, that part of my life was just shit. I had no luck with girls. The only way I could dance with girls and go up to girls was because I drank. I had no self esteem. I didn't think women would want me, so if I was pissed, I didn't care. I
Mm.
just walk up to them then. But I got to 18. I found someone and I thought, oh, this is it. I can stop drinking now. I found someone who, loves me and I love them and all that shit. But unfortunately, she got pregnant. In those days, I virtually sort of had to get married. Got married. Their marriage only lasted 18 months because her fiancé is dead again. Started drinking, drugging again. I used to work for the railways and I used to do shift work. But it was nothing for me to drink at work, get on the train, and then fall asleep and end up at all different places around Melbourne because I'd fall asleep on the train or just pass out. So that marriage lasted only 18 months. And this is where my regrets and my guilt start because we had that one child. I drank, I didn't give a shit about anything. So that poor little girl didn't have a father. I was in the house, but she didn't have a father. My wife at that time didn't really care. So that poor little girl sat in a room. The only time she was brought out was when she was fed.
Mm.
Because I was so immature, I was always drunk, and I did notice even my wife. She didn't drink, but she just didn't give a shit about the little girl, my daughter, and that's when you get so. That's when your regrets start, and your guilt and all that. So I had that guilt then because we split up, and the courts and all that in Australia. The guys didn't have were given a hope to get custody of children then, so the wife got it. Then things happened. I lost contact with my daughter.
Mm.
So,
Mm-mm-mm.
and this is where codependence started, I think, because it was only a couple of years after that I found another bloody victim, and I was married to her for 18 years.
So that snowball's coming down the hill. It's becoming an avalanche, and you're finding more and more of these things sort of just cocooning
Yeah.
into a larger ball.
Well, how many people, normal people, break up from a marriage or a relationship and then go straight in, find someone, and then within 18 months or 2 years or something get married again? Because I needed someone in my life. So I got her. My drinking started to increase. My drugging started to increase. And once again, I learned this pattern. If I was controlling, I wasn't going to get hurt. So this poor woman put up with me for 18 years, being controlling, never violent with her, but
Mm.
I used to control her. If I didn't get my way, I'd sulk. If I didn't get sex, I'd sulk. It didn't matter. I'd sulk or wouldn't talk to her or yell, scream. No physical violence, but yeah.
It's because there's a
But
major lack of love within yourself. So then obviously there was nothing that you could spread across. And then, of course, you got the codependency and the toxicity there, too.
well, that's right. I can't even be honest and say whether I really truly loved her.
Mm.
And that's sad. Many other people get like that, but it's sad. But she put up with me, and away we went. And my drinking just it just kept increasing. I just couldn't handle it. You know, even having a barbecue out in the backyard or something, I had to have a drink in my hand. I'd come home from work, and the first thing I'd do is sit at the fridge, gulp down a couple of rums or whiskies or something, and then pour another glass and then go and have a shower with my glass in the shower. And that's how bad it had gotten. And I used to that was it for me for the night. Sit down, listen to music and drink. There was no socialising, no nothing.
Right.
And then my children come along, my son come along, and I thought, oh, this is it. I've got a son. I've always wanted a son. I've got a son. So this will all change. It didn't change. I can remember I didn't have a licence. And when my wife went into labour, she had to get to the hospital. Well, here I am, been drinking all day. She's pregnant, and I've got to get her to the hospital, so I've got to drive the car illegally to the hospital to get her to hospital. Got her to hospital. Your son was born, good. Yeah, good boy. Straight back home to start drinking again. Now, how many fathers do that? It's just not on.
Right.
So yeah, that was just me pattern. It was greed. It was being selfish, controlling, and I just wasn't a good person. And I sort of knew it, but I didn't give a shit.
Right.
And my biggest change in life was when my daughter was born. I had another little girl. She was premature. We almost lost her. Wife had to have a C-section, and she had the C-section. My daughter Christine, she was brought into I don't know what you call those rooms, but they're a special room for prem babies. And she was brought in the fish tank, I call. And I still remember that day. Put my hand in and she grabbed my finger and she looked at me. Now I know she couldn't see me, and my heart I can't explain it. I just fallen straight in love with this little girl. But we almost lost her and all that. And I sort of promised her I'd look after her. Guess what? Nothing changed. Nothing changed. I loved her. We used to go shopping together. We used to go in the city together. I loved her. But I didn't love her enough to get myself in order and stop drinking.
Right.
And her and my son copped all that all the time with me and my ex-wife fighting, me throwing things. I was another kid in the house. People say when you start drinking, especially if you start drinking heavy, you don't grow up or mature. You stay that age for your drinking career. Well, that was right for me because I was just another kid in the house, me and my son and daughter fighting, you know. I'd pull fuses in there so they couldn't play their music, or they'd do something to me, and it was just a ridiculous thing for the man of the house to be acting like that. I love my daughter dearly. I loved her, but I couldn't stop drinking for her. And just a whole lot of things happened. Come forward a little bit more, and I'd been drinking all day, as usual. This was a Sunday, drinking all day. We sat down to have tea, and my daughter turned the TV on in the fridge, on top of the fridge, to watch The Simpsons. And I said to her, we're not watching that shit. You know, we turn the TV off and we're bloody having tea. Well, my daughter told me, well, Dad, you go in the other room then. And for some reason I did. She told me to go in the other room, so I did. But another problem I had, and still can have, is I stew. I drink, I stew, and all that. And then, of course, I just lost it that day or that night. I went
So
in the kitchen through.
it starts becoming a bigger and bigger avalanche, even through episodes like that.
Well, that was a big avalanche because what happened is I threw plate of food, a few other things happened, and it was a disaster. Well, my wife and my daughter, left the house. They weren't coming back. So I was left in this house by myself, talking to myself, saying they'll be back, they'll be back, they'll be back. And they didn't come back that night. My wife come back next day, and I said, "Where's Christine, my daughter? She's not coming home again."
Mm.
Well, that was a knife to the heart for me. My daughter was scared of me. She didn't want to come home. She wasn't going to come home because of my actions, because of my drinking. And that's when I had to bite the bullet because I couldn't lose my daughter.
Mm.
She's my world. So I thought, shit, what are we going to do? What am I going to do? My wife actually suggested, you've heard of AA. And I thought, oh, AA. I don't know much about AA. I know nothing about AA. So I said to her, look, ring up marriage counselling. I think that's why I drink, because you drive me up the wall. So maybe if we go to marriage counselling and get it fixed up. She come back to me and said the marriage counsellor wouldn't see us until I'd done something with my drinking. So it was put back on me. How about that? This person just has a few drinks to relax and it's put back on me to fix a relationship. And I thought, well,
Wow.
this is ridiculous. So she ended up ringing AA and I got on the phone and I talked to someone for a while there. And it just happened that night there was a meeting where we are at Melton in Melbourne. And so I said, all right, I'll give it a go. And like I said, I knew nothing about AA. I didn't know you had to do. I didn't know what you do. So that meeting was at 8 o'clock that night. So off I go to the meeting. I'm yellow. I hadn't had a drink since the night before.
Mm.
So I was sweaty. I was going through. Everyone knows what the withdrawals are like.
Yeah.
And here I am going to an AA meeting. Walk up. It was at a child mining centre. They had childproof gate there. Went there. I couldn't open the childproof gate. I couldn't open the gate. So some of the people there invited me in, opened the gate, let me in, and one of them escorted me into the room and, got me settled in the room. He brought me over half a cup of coffee and I'm thinking, oh, bloody hell, why couldn't you fill the cup up? And then he said, oh, look at your hands. I was
Mm.
shaking. So that's why they give that's why they gave me a half a cup of coffee, because I would have spilt most of it on the floor because I was shaking that much.
Right.
And he
Right.
said, you just sit there, take the cotton wool out of your ears and shove it in your mouth. Now, that might sound brutal for people today, but that's what they were like at the AA meetings that I come in. They were pretty brutal.
That
And
was
the
the
other
sort of
problem
message
was,
they felt like you needed to hear, so that's why they said that to you.
yeah, well, that's right. The other problem I had, I didn't have many beliefs because I had trauma when I was younger. I'm not going to go into that, but I had some bad trauma involving the church. That lasted 3 years.
Mm.
So I come into this room. It was 5 days before Christmas. This was their Christmas party. I didn't know that. And I walk in, there's candles everywhere. It's all God, the 12 steps, the 12 traditions, and God this and God that, and, all these things around. And it's all done by candlelight.
Right.
And I'm thinking, what the hell have I walked into? They don't normally run like that, just I didn't know that. And I was waiting for them to put a virgin on the table and bloody sacrifice her. I thought I was in a religious sect. It wasn't until they started sharing and I sat and listened and I started hearing these things.
Mm.
And these things are coming from people well dressed, look healthy, they were smiling, they had a bit of a laugh, and they were telling my story. And I'm thinking, well, how can you be laughing? How can you be happy? But these people have been clean and sober for quite a while. And I started to think, shit, I don't know what happened that night, but I was hooked because I wanted what these people had. I don't know what they had at that stage because it was only my first meeting.
Yeah.
So when the meeting was over, people explained things to me and all that and gave me a starter pack and all that. So I went home and then I waited till the next meeting the following week. This lasted a couple of weeks. I didn't realise you go to a meeting every day. It wasn't until somebody came up to me and said, "Look, we're going to such and such meeting. Do you want to come tomorrow on the Tuesday?" And I said, "Oh, yeah." And that's when things started to happen because I got to the stage where I was going to meetings every day. Now, some people agree with that, some don't. But for me, that's what I needed. I needed meetings every day, sometimes two meetings. Because while I was at those meetings, I weren't drinking, I weren't thinking of it. And that was the start of my AA. I still wasn't, you know, I still wasn't right in the head, but I weren't drinking, and of course I weren't using. And I just done that for a couple of years. And then this old guy, Clary, had been watching me. He'd been talking to me on that, but he'd been keeping an eye on me for all this time. And he come up to me and he said, "I think you're ready now," because it took a long time for me to get over the honeymoon period and get over a lot of things. He said, "If you're interested, I could be a sponsor."
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "Oh my oath, yes." He was he was an old-fashioned Aussie, very down-to-earth country man, and he suited me. So I got my sponsor, and he looked after me. We used to go to meetings together. We used to talk together on the phone. He was the type too. I wouldn't feel like going to a meeting some nights. And he'd bash on the door. My wife would open the door and he'd come in and grab me and say, "You're coming to a meeting, you're not staying here."
Mm.
It was, tough love.
Right.
I see it now, but then I used to crack the shit with him. But it was tough love. And that helped me because I needed someone in my life because by the time I got to AA, I had no friends, virtually had no family. I never got invited anywhere because people knew what I was like. So I had no one in my life. And that's why, once again, this is all me. The other reason I like AA because I still believe in the thing of fellowship
Right.
because I had no one in my life. And here I am in a room full of people who accept me for who I was, who wanted to know me, who wanted to befriend me. And
Well,
that was something
Des,
I had.
speaking of fellowship, there are a bunch of people in this room that are watching this, and I just wanted to say hi to them and get a couple of their comments on the screen so we can
Yep, yep,
talk to
yep.
some of that real quick. Jack says, "Hey, howdy, JB. Happy to see and hear you." Let's see. Copy Trading says, "Hi, John and guest. Hi, Copy. How are you? Hope you're well on that side." Sarah says, "Better late than never. Good to see you tonight, Sarah, for sure." And then Merck says, "We called them spirits too in the 1900s." Going back to the thing you were saying before about what you would call those liquors that are sitting on the shelf. Sherry was laughing at that. Sherry also said it's the same vicious cycle. So as we see that snowball coming down the hill and it's becoming an avalanche, same vicious cycle for sure. Alicia says, "Hi, hey everyone. Hey Alicia, how you doing? Hope you're well." Uh, Alicia says, "Love you, Des. We all love you, Des, without a question, big time."
Thank you.
Sherry says, "Insanity right there. As far as that sort of trip you went down with the kid and all of that, and that sort of compounding upon compounding upon compounding." Sherry also says, "I disagree, Des. We did give a shit, but we could not control it. I just think there is a difference." Thoughts?
Yeah, I suppose we did give a shit, but I just still feel I just was never in the right state of mind then. Like I don't know. I still 17 years sober, and I still have trouble comprehending a lot of stuff. I still, 17 years, you'd think you'd get it by now, but I still have trouble working things out. So,
Mm.
yeah, the pain doesn't go away. It didn't go away and it hasn't gone away from me. I've still got a lot of pain. I'm dealing with it. I'm getting through things with the help of people in AA, my home group. And Cherie, for one, Cherie's been wonderful with me. She's really helped me a lot. I love Cherie a lot. She understands me more than normal people in AA, if that's possible. So, yeah.
Shuri,
But
I guess, in a sense that understands a lot of us in that group for sure.
yeah, for somebody who come into AA just to support somebody and then realise, yeah, I've got a problem. And
Mm.
then she stayed and she's been a stable part of our group here in Melton, a very important person in our group. And she's the sort of person who does anything for you. And as she says, she's a yes person, which we hope she gets out of that day eventually.
Mm.
She's a good friend, but she doesn't need to say yes to everyone. So, yeah.
Elo says, "Hey JV," in the Venture Forward. Hey Elo, how are you tonight? Sammy says, "Hey JV." Hey Sammy, hope you're having a good evening over there. Shuri goes on to say, "Yep, always blaming everyone but ourselves." So not realizing things on our own.
Well, especially when you're in full addiction, yeah, it was
Mm-hmm.
everyone's fault. It could still be other people's fault if I let it get to me.
Shuri also says, "Never look
So,
back, Desi. Proud of you, mate." With a heart and a kiss. Stick says, "Hey John, how are you? Hope you're doing well over there." I put this back up before. Sherry says, "Tough love." There's a lot of tough love here for sure, especially in your group, your AA group.
yeah, well, see, all these AA meetings seem to run a little bit different. You know, the ones in America, Australia. And when I come in, it was tough love. They didn't muck around. It was tough love.
Mm.
But I notice these days a lot of meetings and all that they've simmered down. Like when we shared at our meetings, we had to get up and stand in the front of, like being at school, stand in front of the meeting and share our story. These days, they sit down, they don't get up, but they made us get up. The other thing they do in them days is we had to wash dishes, we had to dry tables, we had to pack things away.
Mm.
That was learning to be responsible again. You don't get a lot of that these days with a lot of the newcomers. But we had to. You got thrown a tea towel and you had to dry dishes. But that was teaching us. None of us had responsibility.
Right.
Responsibility went out the window when we're drinking using. So the first thing I learned in AA is, yeah, I have responsibility. I've got to clean those dishes. I've got to
It
put the
also shows
dishes
you what the
away.
achievable is too, right?
Well, that's it. It's tough love once again. You've got to do the work, and that's it. But the biggest thing for me, and I'll just get you on the story a little bit because there's one part I got clean and sober, and things went things were going reasonable. I've got mental health issues. I've got other things, but I get through them. I go through nutty stages. I go through the poor me's. I still do that, but in general, I usually do all right.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to my daughter again, it was about 7 years, no, maybe 8 years ago. My daughter was married, Christine. My daughter was married. Um, I was able to be sober for her marriage,
Mm-hmm.
which she wouldn't have let me. She wouldn't have let me at the wedding if I had been still drinking and using. But she had a little boy, a little son, and this boy was born with a heart defect, a very bad heart defect, and
Sorry.
no, that's okay. And they operated on all that, and they let him go home. And now I was at work at this time. I got a phone call from my daughter saying, "Yes, your grandson's turning blue. He's turning blue," and they raced him off to the hospital. By the time they got him to the hospital, he was virtually brain dead. Um, so all that was keeping them alive was machinery. And I rushed into the hospital to be with my daughter. And this is where getting sober and clean is so important, especially for young ones. Because I was clean and so I was to be able to be there when my daughter needed her father most of all. They made the decision to turn the machinery off. And I was able to sit not next to her husband was next to her, but I sat behind her in the back rows a little bit while they were turning the machines off and let my grandson die. And I was there with my daughter. The only thing was, for the first time in my life, I was able to bullshit things. I was able to do things like bullshitting, and it was the one time in my life I felt useless. I couldn't pick up my little girl like I used to, hug her, kiss her, and say, now, that day, I could have said I felt like a drink. But I had to sit there and think, well, what's the sense in that? Because she's still got to go through a funeral and everything. So we went through that, went through the funeral. I still remember going seeing my little grandson in his little white coffin. It was only a 3 foot long coffin, and they had him with his hand out of the blanket. He looked like he was alive. He looked real. Once again, I could have gone out and drank. To me, I would have had an excuse to go out and drink. But I knew my daughter was going to need me for the rest of my life. I done made that many mistakes in my younger. I put my family through hell, my kids through hell, everyone around me through hell. I had to be there for my daughter. Because she had a couple more kids, but the last one she had the same thing. He had a heart defect. But they were able to operate on him. He's got a pacemaker and he's all there. Not long after that, her marriage broke up. Once again, I'm clean and sober because I promised her I would look after her as long as I'm alive.
When your family needed you the most, you were there.
That's right. But I could only do that because I got clean and sober.
Right.
And this is why I tell, like on Discord and some of the other things, and you've seen it, that we were such young people. We had a 14-year-old on the other week. And I'm only like working with the young ones because I don't want them to go through. And you did say you don't want these people to go through what we've been through because it's a hard battle. The older you get, the harder the battle is. And I don't want that to happen to these young ones. And that's why I want to be there for them and help them. And the other thing, I don't know how some people, I've spoke to you before about, you had your 3 addiction and you're working on 3. I only had 2, drugs and alcohol, and there was still a battle enough. And I see these single mothers and fathers, they're single parents, and they've got children. Some of them have got 2, 3, and they want to even got 4. And they're battling addiction, trying to keep their recovery going. And I think, how do these people do it? And that's why I choose to be there for them to try and help them. And believe it or not, and some of them have said to me, but how? And I say to them, but you're helping me. I stay in recovery 24/7. I've got to. And me helping people are helping me. It's a stark reminder. And my sponsor said to me, because he died, that's enough, he was scared. But he said to me, Des, I've given you all this freely. You've got to give the same back freely to other people in need.
That
And I
truly is what
promised
the
him
service
I
arm of the
would.
triangle actually is, isn't it?
Exactly. We've got to give freely. It gets frustrating sometimes and all that, but we've got to do it because the newcomer to me is the most important person in the room because they remind me of what it was like. And I need a newcomer. And I've made it my thing to handle recovery. Lots changed. I was AA, Big Book, and I love the Big Book. I still love the Big Book. But I've also changed a lot. I'm doing drug and alcohol courses now to be a counsellor. I've learned new. Merck got me onto Mirror.
Hmm.
So I've been going to some of the Mirror meetings. I'm learning a lot from there. I'm learning a lot of new information that's expanding my view on addiction. It's just not one thing. It's not just AA, NA, the big book. It's not just this. There's different pathways people need to be able to take if they need it. They need our support, the ones who do it, like your show, Recovering Addict. We need these for the newcomers. We can't drag the newcomers in, but we can be there if they need us.
Right.
But I have gone through a lot of shit. There's a lot of guilt there with the way I treated my families, my kids. But when I was needed by my daughter, I was there, and that always my daughter was my higher power. People might get upset with,
Yeah.
don't care. She was my higher power. I had to be there for her. But my first day she held onto my finger and smiled. I thought she smiled at me. Because they actually had to drag me away from there because my wife was waiting for me in the recovery room. So they come and said, your wife's ready. And I says, oh, I can't move. She's holding my finger. That's how my daughter affected me. So she was my higher power. Reason I got clean and sober wasn't for myself at first. I realised you do have to do it for yourself. But I was with it. But that's why I want newcomers not to get to my age. I'm 63 now. And I've wasted all those years. And I just don't want newcomers to do that. I want to let
That
them know. You go. Yep.
and it's like it's what we always been saying, right? Especially so much so in the last month. It's not how you begin though, it's how you finish. It's how you continue forward once you realize you're making such a humongous mistake and the sort of pathway that you construct from there. That is it's just the most incredible piece of this story is the fact that you have been there and you're providing so much support and love and service to so many. It's just it's so there are no words. There absolutely are no words.
So the trouble with people, new people in recovery is, and a lot of people are like that. I probably was even like that. Was a lot of them. I call it sitting on the fence. They have one leg over one side of the fence, the other leg over the other side of the fence, and they're trying to work out which way to jump. They know if
Right.
they jump one way, they've got to get into recovery. They've got to do the hard work. And we spoke about that before too, about 24/7 recovery. You can't just put it away after an hour into a cupboard and forget about it. You've got to keep doing it.
It's
And
understanding and caring.
that's right. But some of them keep one foot on the other side of the fence because they just don't want to let go of that last bit of their old life. And that's where we've got to give them support and work with them and see there is a better life. I share that thing with my daughter and my grandson and all that for the simple reason that young people know, single mothers or fathers, let people who've got young kids. One day you're going to be a father of an adult daughter or an adult son who are going to need you. And if you're dead, jail, or still in addiction, you're not going to be there for them. And the change starts then, where they see what you were like, then quite often they get in the drugs, the alcohol, and then that family change starts.
Right.
And that's what we've got to try and nip, that family change. That it doesn't. I still get worried now. I won't be here, but I get worried that I wonder which ones of my grandkids are going to be the alcoholic and drugs. The percentage is there. Yeah, it's there. At least they'll
Well,
know where to go. Yeah.
the one other thing I'll say is, the people that are in this room right now are our friends, but I will say they are family, and I'd like to also introduce a new member of this family as well, who told her story last Thursday. Leah, I'm glad you're here. She's had lots of friends in here for sure. There are a lot of friends in here, but we do consider ourselves family without question. Mark
That's
says,
the main thing. It is them.
yeah. Mark said, I went through quite a few years and genuinely did not give one shit about anything or anyone.
But like I said, even if you do give a shit about someone, and love somebody, you still do the same behaviours. So that's how stupid this disease is, how bad it is. You can love someone, but still put your addiction first.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go.
Sherry's definitely
That's
feeling the
what
love
we
and
do.
thanks you for that. Merck says every group needs a couple of Aussies like Sherry and Des. You
Yeah,
guys are amazing.
yeah. We just need an American dictionary.
LT in the house yells Des. So LT's here for you. Merck calling him Leonard. I'm sure they're going to take that offline for sure, as he spells it correctly too. I'm sure there's going to be a discussion.
Well, I'd just like to say, actually, if LT's still here, it's people like LT, yourself. There's a few other groups I sort of go into, and they're all American groups, and they're helping me. They are, you're all family over in America, England, and all that. The sad thing here in Australia is we don't have this sort of thing going. Australians are very naive too. The general population of Australia is naive. I've always looked into America because America's our future. For the
Mm-hmm.
simple reason, what normally happens in America, like the opioid crisis, all the different things that happen in America eventually make it here into Australia. But our governments and general public don't want to know that. They say it won't happen here. And the other problem here is we've got a lot of parents, a lot of people say our daughters and sons won't get into drugs. And they turn a blind eye to it. Instead of education and all that, they turn a blind eye and then they're all of a sudden shocked when their
Mm-hmm.
son or daughter come home and admit we're an alcoholic or we're on drugs. And that's one thing you Americans are doing well. These shows, LT show, your show, and a few of the other ones, you are doing it really well. You're doing a service. If it hadn't have been for the virus, which I hate to mention, but hadn't have been for that, like me and Cherie and Aubrey and a few other Australians wouldn't have known about what's going on, what's available. But we don't
Right.
have any of this here. Now, you Americans are stuck with us Aussies for quite a while, actually. So, until somebody is Brady enough to know how to do all this shit, as I
I'll tell
can't.
you one thing though that's common here, as is halfway around the world, is the sense that watching our kids hurt is the greatest pain there is. Thank you, Leah, for saying that.
Yep.
Sherry says, yes, she gave her the support she needed from her daddy. He
Mm.
absolutely did.
But that's it. I got so upset. I didn't know how to deal with this girl who was on our recovering addict a while ago, 14. And my mind goes straight back to my daughter when she was 14. And I'm thinking, gosh, I knew she could, but I couldn't imagine it. A 14-year-old in drug addiction. And that was I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't even know what to say to this young girl. I really didn't. Because I'm getting to an age where maybe I can't talk properly. I'm a slow typer. I knows what I'm like on the internet. So she was 14 though, and I just it it hit me hard. This 40-year-old girl, and that's where the population, but America, all over the world, have got to realise our kids are our future, and they're
Mm-hmm.
getting into drugs earlier. And it's not drugs like when I was little, LSD, marijuana, all this stuff, which were bad, but not that bad. Even heroin wasn't too bad, and speed and all that. But today they're taking stuff that is deadly. It's made in backyard laboratories. It's you know even alcohol. You make your own alcohol now and put your own percentage of alcohol in it. People are drinking. Do you use have methylated spirits in America? What we call metho?
I've heard
You
stories of
do.
that. Yeah, I've heard stories about
Well,
that.
what I used, I didn't share that bit, but when I worked for the railways, what I used to do is get a can of vegetable soup, tip the liquid out of the vegetable soup, put the can in a pot, and then fill it up with metho, mix it all up, and I'd have vegetable soup with metho.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the sort of thing kids can get hold of alcohol. Here in Australia, it's that easy. You go to the supermarket, you buy vanilla rest, and this worries me. And I know there's not much I can do, but I'm hoping people who are young to get to a stage where they're going to be able to do some population.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's still worrying. But I'm getting too old to do much help, and the young people are going to have to. The parents have to get their heads out of their asses. I'm afraid it's happening. Kids
It's
are
the
on drugs.
truth.
It's
Absolutely is the
addicting.
truth.
And like your thing with with your eating things and all that. Australia is like America. We've got our kids are obese. They live on junk food and they're all obese. And
These
it's
are
getting
battles
worse.
that we fought, but the battles that they're fighting are a lot more transcended because there are so many different ways that they could occupy themselves with said battles, for sure.
Yeah. So the kids the kids are just going places I never thought kids would go at that age. Even though I didn't think it'd get as bad as it has there. So, but not much I can do about it except be there when they fall off and they need help.
Cherie shared a comment that I think is in everybody's mind right now, given this hour. She said, Des is going to be the best counselor in Australia. You're incredible,
Yeah,
Des.
I've got to pass the course first. As everyone knows, I can't read and write. I type. I type real slow. And when I got to rely on spell check. So yeah, Merck agreed. Yeah.
Paul, how you doing tonight? Good to see you. He says, love your shows, John. You're always so powerful and inspiring. I hope this provided some inspiration for you in this last hour for sure, Paul. Glad to see you here. Shuri says that would be painful for boys on the fence. And I not to tie one gender versus another, but we understand that for sure. Being on the fence
Yeah,
and what yeah. Mark says,
but
amen to that,
yeah,
Des. It truly helps having little ones watch my reactions and how I treat people.
well, that's what I mean. People like Merck, who's clean and sober now, they even though they annoy us, my grandkids annoy me because they've got too much energy. But it's a good it's good to be able to be with children clean and sober and see them growing and all that. And Merck's at the age where it's good because I didn't see him growing. I was pissed all the time and drunk and high. And so people like Merck and a lot of the others who are clean sober got young kids. They'll see the miracle of growth, which I missed out on. So, yeah, you got to grab hold of it.
Shri
Really do
reminded
have
us
to grab
that, yes, America is way ahead of us, even though they are a day behind.
Yeah. But I just like to thank, like you, LT, and all the without these platforms getting to more people, hopefully we will make a difference.
I would say to LT, Nicole, folks like Sober James as well, they've all been very helpful in this, in their own audiences, and getting people to realize, hey, if you are abusing or you're drinking or you're doing this or the other thing, you have to, now is the time. Now is the time to make that correction, to get yourself a healthier life, a better path forward, in this case, a venture forward.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing you just said, path. There's a lot of pathways out there to get clean and sober, eating problems, gambling. There's different pathways out there. We've got to be open to. The other thing we can't afford to do is pick on people. You know, if they're on their journey, they might need backup drugs to help them get off drugs, or like alcoholics, you have got stuff they can take to help them. We can't be judgmental with anyone. People have got to go on their journey. They've got to recover the best way they can and not be judged by anyone. And unfortunately, there's a lot of people in recovery who are very judgmental, and I don't like that.
Neither
We've
do
got
I.
to do it. You've just got to take what path you need to take to get clean and sober, control your eating, control your gear, all those things. You go on forever. But people have got to be supportive of people, not judgmental.
Right.
We've got to cut judgmental out and be supportive of each other.
The last thing we need right now is vitriol. Where we need is the most love, respect, and honesty amongst each other so we can all get better. We can all transcend each other based on that service arm of the triangle for sure.
Yeah, well, that's why I got on to Mirror. And I was staggered. I was wrapped. By listening to some of them. I was also sad because quite a few of those people I heard left AA because they were told they're not welcome because they were on different sorts of drugs and all that help them. And that made it sad. But I just want it to be an open path for anyone. Addiction's addiction, and however we get out of that addiction, we've just got to support each other.
Yep, without question.
And that's what they're doing.
Sherry says definitely no judgment. And Sarah goes on and says, some people really can't see it, and they go way down to find bottom.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's true. Unfortunately, with that, of course, we all know where the real bottom is, and that's, first of all, jail, and then probably death. Yeah. It's pretty hard when you're hearing 14-year-olds on drugs and thinking they could be dead in 3 or 4 years. Sad, isn't it?
Very scary.
It is scary. It really does worry me, but yeah.
Well, Des, I gotta say, you really provided a story that is important for us to hear, for us to understand exactly what you've gone through, the things that have been on the line for you, how you stood up to be an incredible member of the family and your friends and whatnot when things got really tough. Do you have any sort of nuggets of wisdom or any final thoughts for us this evening?
I suppose that judgmental thing, don't be judgmental on people, and live recovery 24/7. As soon as you take your eye off that, or just put it in a cupboard somewhere, that's when it's going to hit you again. You've got to live it. You've got to really live it. And that's just the way it is, you know. And you've got to make sacrifices. A lot of people can't get clean and sober because they don't want to leave their old friends and this and that. We've got to. So, yeah, that's just the way it is. Yeah. But just help people out and join groups like this and get involved in groups where you can be family members.
Yeah.
And help.
Cherie says, I'll bring her comment back up. That's okay, cuz that they then can always go up with a hug and a kiss. And Merck says, this was a great show. The two of you killed it. Merck, you definitely got the ball rolling for us 2 weeks ago when you told your story. And I am thankful for people like you and like Des and like Leah and everybody else who has been a part of this show as we continue this venture forward going down the road here. Des, thank you again for joining us tonight and telling your story and sharing it with us.
Thank you. And thank you for all the people who watched it. You're all family. You're all friends. And most it's the ones who aren't in recovering addict. I'm in Discord and recovering addict. And I'm there most of the time. So people who are struggling, I'm there. So, yeah, as most people know, I'm there hiding.
Thank you, Des. We love you. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you. Catch you later.
And go back to one panel here. Des is an amazing human being. A lot of human beings exist in these groups. And if you have something that you're thinking about and there's something that you want to try to fight and you realize things are holding you back, these are the groups that you need to explore for sure. We're going to be back again tomorrow night for the VF Talks at 5:15. Until then, stay safe, stay sane, stay strong, stay sober. You're worth it. Have a great night.